Hello, and welcome to Starting Points, where one thing leads to another. Part 2 on shells. Guides to shells. There seem to have been a lot of guides made. This is the LaRousse Guide to Shells of the World by A.P.H. Oliver, illustrated by James Nichols. And it's a neat book. It tells, these are miter shells, it tells who gave the Latin name to it, when that was done, 1883, where it was done, the Indo-Pacific, its size, 30 millimeters, and then in words it tries to describe that shell. Well, I marked a couple of things here. Here's the famous tower shell, and Latin name, and then Angus, 1877, Japan, 100 millimeters. It's a good size shell. What else have we got here? I mean, the book is actually just very informative. Here's our Argonaut and the chamber nautilus side by side, and here's some harp. Shells. So it's a neat guide. It's the artwork is lovely. I mean, the olive shells, he's managed to make them appear to be as shiny and glossy as they are. The artwork is just amazing. So that guide. And here's a guide. Would you know? It's by Eyewitness Handbooks. 500 species of seashells from around the world. And there's the Wendell trap on the cover. And this turban shell, beautiful turban shell. And there's that Japanese wonder shell. And the sundial shell, chamber nautilus. Here's a marbled chiton. Wow. Rose branch murex. So let's see, I've marked a few things here. Of course, limpets, because I'm going to be sharing you a story that involves limpets. In fact, a story that involves the Wendell trap are my last 2 of the 6 books. So, Barbados keyhole limpet has a little keyhole-like opening in the top. It shows a little map where you'd find that all along that coastline down Mexico and all the way down to Peru. And it tells the size in 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters, some description of it, and others don't have this hole in the shell. Long-ribbed limpets has a really neat, rugged-looking sides to it. Oh, here's Lester's keyhole limpet. I'm staying corrected. Its inside is a nice palish green with did I mark anything else? No, I guess not. Here's a music volute. because it looks like there are musical notes written on it. So this is a really nice guide too. Oh, and they've got something called occurrence. 3 means so-sos. Sometimes there'll be 5 means fairly common. Sometimes there might only be 1, meaning it's relatively rare. So let's go to the eyewitness bookshelf. There's abalone. There's that tower shell. It seems to make the front cover quite a bit. Then there's the mussels. And so also talks about like turtle shells. And here is a really wonderful take on that whorl. They cut this so that you could see that here it's sort of missing. They just missed getting it. But then it shows up. It goes around and around and around, right into which the Nautilus can control its buoyancy. And yeah, here's the sundial, the one that I was saying Frank Lloyd Wright might have used as a model for spiraling down for his Guggenheim Art Museum in, not his, but for what he designed for. Here is the Wendell trap. It is fascinating because these little rib-looking things that go around it leave a little gap between this part of the curve and this part of the curve. So there's just a little space in between those. And beautiful Cuban land snails. Look at those colors. Well, one more thing marked here. Oh, well, that's the Nautilus and the paper Nautilus, and the chitin, and the 2 strange seashells. Okay, and now this book I've shown you before, because when we were looking at when I was looking at the aquarium, and the first person that invented the aquarium, I came across this book, Spirals in Time, on shells, and got it and found that there was a 5-page story about Jean Villepour Power, and that was fascinating. What she's done is she's written stories about various things. In other words, it made shells sort of come alive, history and stories about them, and so I find it very interesting reading. Now, I marked a couple of other things. Cone shell. Now, enormous amount is known about cone snails and their complex venoms. I should have shown you some cone snails. I realize that now. Cone shells look like a cone, an inverted cone, and spiraling, but smooth sides and decorated sides. But they have defenses, and then one of their defense is a type of venom that can be extremely varied depending on the different cone shell and that particular cone gastropod, and deadly in some instances. So then she's got an interesting article about the problem of pH in terms of having enough carbon dioxide and what that all does in terms of shell building, the necessary pH factor that allows the shells to actually form, for the mollusk to form a shell. And then she ends with an interesting reminder. Nautiluses and other big shells should definitely be avoided. In general, the bigger an animal, the longer it lives, and the slower it grows, and the more vulnerable it is to being overhunted, which is certainly the case for nautiluses. Well, it's a big enough shell that people can see it and notice it, and on the whole, it's impossible to know where a shell came from and how it was caught. There are no eco-labels for ornamental shells certifying that they come from sustainable sources. Unless you care a whole lot about having commercially bought shells in your life, it's perhaps best to resist temptation and leave them all alone. Yeah, we have to respond to what's happening, and that's one space. She talks about the shell collecting industry, and there's no real safeguards of what are endangered. And she ends this little article with, and for your own sake, watch out for the cone snails. Well, I would say, what with books like this, and guidebooks even, with the photographs or the paintings and the you can appreciate the shell without having to own the actual shell. In YouTube, you can watch the chamber nautilus on YouTube swimming, and two picture books. One by Jean Craighead George and Simeon Shimian did the illustrations, and this is a lovely book. It's dealing with a Wendell trap shell, of that very rare shell, and a hermit crab. The other book is Sally and the Limpet by Simon James. He wrote and illustrated it. This is a funny book, and just tickled my funny bone, and it's a real charmer. And this is a lovely story as well. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, bye for now.